Okay, members, order. The sitting is resumed. It's time for questions to the Minister for Infrastructure, and I call Timothy Gaston.
One.
Sir.
In advance of the planning application in 2017, Translink undertook extensive community engagements in both Sandy Row and Grosvenor Road areas. Much of the feedback received was incorporated into the design for the new station, such as ensuring easy access to Sandy Row from the station once the project is complete, retaining pedestrian access from Sandy Row to the city centre via the existing Europa bus station, and significantly extending public rail works up Sandy Row. I am also aware that Translink has been continually engaging with local community, including businesses in the area, throughout the design and construction of the new station. This has included regular engagement with the local retailers forum, face-to-face engagement with the businesses in Sandy Row in July 2023, and a presentation of the works was given to elected and community representatives in the area in February 2024. An update covering the Durham Street road closure was provided at a local community meeting in April 2024, and a letter drop was sent to residents, community groups and businesses on the 8th of October 2024, providing full details of the road closures and associated activity. Feedback from this more recent community engagement highlighted that one of the benefits identified from the temporary closure of Durham Street would be the reduction in through traffic on Sandy Row, which had become an increasing issue for residents in the area. I appreciate that there may be some impact on retailers in the area, and as a result of this, Translink has reached out to the Linen Quarter Business Improvement District and other agencies to see if there is an opportunity to work with local retailers to assist them during this transition phase while the works are completed. Once completed, Saltwater Square will be a new public space in the city and one of the major points of the new station. It's envisaged to be used in a similar way to Customs House Square, where it can be used for public art, entertainment and leisure activities. It will also be a lively, busy place, providing opportunities for visitors, local residents and commuters.
Much. Minister, yesterday I asked you how many planning condition breaches your department has been guilty of in relation to the closure and later the demolition of the Boyne Bridge, and you said none. In response to 3 written questions last month, you told me that you were in the process of discharging a number of planned conditions related to the Belfast Transport Hub that were originally put in place to protect the unionist businesses in Sandy Row. Minister, what sort of messaging does it give to others where rules and regulations come as an afterthought in your department?
The member needs to understand the distinct legal entity that is Translink. My department, as I stated yesterday, is not in breach of any planning conditions in relation to this planning application. My department is working its way through a number of planning matters in relation to Translink's programme of work in and around the Great Central Station and other matters, but the member would do well to understand the legal entity that is Translink.
Deborah Erskine.
Mr. Deputy Speaker. Minister, yesterday we talked about the traffic chaos in Belfast. The Minister answered my question in relation to the Strategic Oversight Group. It's not meeting daily. It's meeting weekly now. It doesn't include the Chamber or the business community. And yesterday there was a work from home messaging from his department, and then you've been publicly embarrassed in relation to bringing forward your meetings with the businesses. So why has engagement not taken place urgently in relation to the traffic chaos that is going on in Belfast before now? We all knew the traffic chaos was going to come. Why is it taking until now?
Those who claim to have the interests of Belfast at heart would do well not to be broadcasting constantly. There's traffic chaos in Belfast. There is traffic congestion in Belfast. Last Thursday night was particularly difficult as a result of a traffic accidents on the M1 and M2, the weather conditions and failure of traffic lights at the Armour Road. So if people in this room have genuinely the interests of Belfast at heart, then let's have a sensible, informed conversation about what's going on in Belfast and ensuring that those people who want to travel to Belfast to enjoy the sights and sounds of the festive season feel confident in doing so. I never said yesterday the strategic group was meeting daily. I said it had been meeting daily. And why is the business groups not represented on it? It's not the right forum for the business groups, but I've already given instructions to the group to improve their communications with the business groups, because the business groups are key stakeholders in this regard. And in regards to me being embarrassed in overturning a decision, I wasn't aware until I heard on the radio this morning that I wouldn't be meeting the Chamber of Commerce until January. I am not involved in putting meetings into my diary. I agree to meet groups, and quite rightly my private office organises those meetings. The meeting date was agreed between my private office and the business group. Agreed. So when I became aware they had concerns, I brought the meeting forward, and I'm happy to do so. I have a very, very good working relationship with the Belfast Chamber of Commerce and other commercial groups across the north.
Matthew Toole.
Minister, first of all, you may want to speak to your private office if you have no say in what goes into your diary. Secondly, I just want to gently push back. Mr Gaston talked about unionist businesses in Sandy Row. People from all over the community have used the shops in Sandy Row, and I hope that's the case in the future. We need to be careful about that kind of language. But Minister, can I just ask you briefly, you said yesterday you wanted people out of their cars into public transport. We can all agree with that. In order to do that, particularly in the south of this city, we need glider phase 2. When are we going to get an update on that? You promised it would be in the coming weeks. We haven't heard anything yet.
Sure.
I've often heard the Leader of Opposition talk about being constructive opposition. So what is constructive about misrepresenting what I've just said? I said I agreed to meet with the group. What date that goes into the diary is organised between my private office and the organisation in which I am meeting. And as I emphasise the term, the date was agreed. When I became aware that the business group had concerns, I quite rightly asked my private office to contact them again and see if we could bring the meeting forward. We have done that. When will Belfast Transport or BRT2 be in place? When I'm in a position to make an announcement. I hope it is before the end of this calendar year. If it's not before the end of this calendar year, it'll be immediately after the end of this calendar year, and we will progress that as well, and that will provide more public transport infrastructure for the city and for those who wish to travel into the city and across the city.
Stewart.
Mr. Given the impact that these roadworks, etc., are having on local businesses in the area, have you engaged with your colleagues in both the Finance Office and the Economy Ministry just to see what support could be opened up for the businesses who are impacted during this period?
Minister.
I understand that the Department for Communities is bringing forward a specific programme of work for Sandy Row, and fair play for them for doing so. I am aware that the business organisations in the city regularly meet with my executive colleagues to discuss issues. And again, I emphasise the point. One of the reasons why Belfast is so busy with traffic is because Belfast is doing particularly well commercially as well. Like all businesses, they're still recovering from the COVID-19 impact. This season is particularly important to them. I will work businesses in that manner. But again, I say to members in this chamber, if you're sending out a message that there's chaos in Belfast, what message does that send to people who are wanting to come into the city to enjoy the sights and sounds of the city? I and my department have set out alternatives to commuters coming into the city, and I would encourage others to encourage commuters to see and plan how they travel into the city.
Question 2. We don't have the member in his place today, so I move to call Nick Matheson.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Question 3.
The proposed pedestrian and cycle bridge forms part of the Newton Orange to Bangor Greenway. Planning approval for the project, including the bridge, was granted in September 2022. Orange and North Down Council are leading on the delivery of this project, and I am pleased that my department has been able to provide 50% of capital funding required to bring it forward. We know that greenways contribute positively to local communities and can bring many health and economic benefits, and I look forward to seeing that happening here. More generally, with respect to active travel, members may be aware that I recently launched a public consultation on a draft active travel delivery plan for the North. This plan sets out how my department will prioritise and deliver high-quality active travel infrastructure, particularly for shorter everyday journeys. I would encourage everyone to engage with the consultation to help shape our priorities for the delivery of pedestrian and cycling infrastructure, improvements within our villages, towns and cities now and into the future.
Nick Matheson.
thank the Minister for the response and the update on the wider Greenways investment, and welcome the investment in Greenways in the Ards and North Down Council area. The Minister may be aware that the residents who live directly on the site where this footbridge is due to be constructed have expressed serious concerns about that aspect of the project. They have also raised a range of wider concerns around road safety in the laneway they reside on, speed limits and proposed alternative crossing options for access to the Greenway. But they have been disappointed by the lack of engagement with DFI officials on their request to meet. Given the range of concerns that they have highlighted and raised and the constructive proposals they would like to bring to your officials, would you be able to facilitate a meeting between your officials and this group of concerned residents?
Minister.
The member will be aware that this project received planning permission in September 2022. It has gone through the local council. All the issues in relation to concerns by residents in that regard would have been raised and dealt with through the planning process. So my understanding is that Ards and North Down Council are now moving ahead with this project. It is regrettable that there are, I don't know all the circumstances. Often there's quite understandable concerns about changes in neighbourhoods and changes to the environment around citizens. But the planning process has to take all into account, then come to a decision. The decision has been made by Ards and North Down Council to proceed with this project.
Michael Brogan.
Can the Minister outline what his department is doing to improve active travel?
As mentioned earlier, I recently launched the active travel consultation document, and I would encourage members and others to make themselves familiar with that document and respond in due course. It is a document which sets out the department's vision for what active travel will look like in the future. We've given a number of examples and locations as to where we would like to see active travel projects go ahead, but I think it's important that local communities, local elected representatives feed into that consultation and make this as an inclusive document as possible.
Justin McNulty.
Can the Minister give us an update on the new Newry to Carlingford Greenway, which is under construction? I know that right now there's a new boardwalk being constructed adjacent to the Victoria Lock, and that project is going to be transformative for Omeath, for Warren Point, for the Mourns, for Cooley, and together with Narrow Water Bridge project, of course paid by the Irish Government, it's going to be transformative for the whole region.
Minister.
The question doesn't relate to the original question, but the member has given us a very comprehensive update of the project.
Andy Allen. Andy Allen indicating for a supplementary.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and can I thank the Minister for his update on active travel. Minister, can you advise what you're doing to ensure the voices of the disabled community is at the forefront of active travel, and in particular schemes such as bus stop borders, etc., where they cause an impact upon the disabled community, are being addressed, like that, the example on the Dublin Road?
Sure.
The member raises a very relevant and important point about the inclusivity of active travel moving forward. We are working very closely with IMTAC in that, and I believe Dermot Davlin was also present and gave an address at the launch of the document recently. So yes, we're engaging closely with the disabled community around this. They're important stakeholders in this discussion on how we plan forward, and I would encourage anyone with the views on this to respond to the consultation.
Call Mark Durkin.
My department's policy for the provision of street lighting in rural areas is detailed in Policy and Procedures Guide E072. The policy has been in place since 1993, uses two main criteria when considering the provision of street lighting in rural areas. These relate to the density of the development along a road or where lighting is likely to help at sites that have a significant history of nighttime collisions. There needs to be at least 10 dwellings located within a continuous 200-metre road length to qualify for the installation of street lighting. In applying this rule, dwellings must front the road which is considered for lighting. At present, the section of the Bruncanna Road near Carsh Quinn does not meet the criteria under this department policy.
Durkin for supplementary.
As the Minister's aware, Carsh Quinn is on or off the Buncrana Road. Can the Minister provide us with an update on the long-awaited and long-overdue dualling of the A2 Buncrana Road which the delays now aren't just causing problems with traffic in the area, but more and more potential road safety interventions along the route have been put off and put off because the dualling has been imminent for nearly 50 years.
Sure.
The future on the delivery of that project rests with the local transport plan, and we hope to be in a position to launch a consultation on the Darien-Strabane District Council transport plan early next summer. I believe the date is set for that, and that will then fit into how we move strategic traffic in and around that area, how we deal with the traffic in terms of the increasing numbers of students, etc., in relation to the McGee campus, etc. So it's an important document, and I have no doubt the member will be responding to it in due course.
Michelle.
Minister, can I ask how your department considers the impact of street lighting on safety for women and girls?
Sure.
It is safety in general is one of the factors taken into account when the provision of street lighting. But I do, and I am aware of the launch of the policy in relation to ending violence against women and girls. And there's a number of areas in my department where I think we do have to have a rethink as to what services we provide and how we provide those services. And I believe the street lighting policy will fall under that as well.
Claire Sutton.
Speaker, question number 5.
Sorry, question 5? I met with Minister Nesbitt and Minister Muir on the 9th of September to discuss the cross-departmental working group on community transport, which I established in my previous time as Minister. We collectively agreed that the group will look to consider whether transport in the community can provide a more cost-effective, value-for-money service delivery model to meet the needs of users, and to investigate the potential for community transport providers to be part of a collaborative group of transport options and pathways that can be accessed by the population. My officials are currently preparing a new transport strategy and a new suite of transport plans that will set the framework for transport policy and investment decisions up until 2035. The suite of transport plans will not consider changes to community transport operations, so these matters are being considered separately by the department at a regional level and will be integrated into the plans as appropriate. While health and social care transport is the responsibility for the Department of Health, the transport plans will consider access, including by public transport, to the main health and social care facilities.
Sugden for supplementary.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Minister, for your response. And I'm pleased to hear that you are working with other departments in relation to trying to coordinate an approach around transport. And can I encourage you to particularly look at this and how it impacts in rural areas? You know, to get from Corrigan to Castle Rock on a public transport bus could take up to an hour, whereas if you were using a car, it would take 10 minutes. However, if community transport would take them to the bus stop, then there's ways that we can do this better. Any more conversations that we could have in relation to medical transport, because I know a lot of people are paying privately for that, and it's quite significant in cost.
Sure.
Well, I'm happy for my department to engage in any conversations as to how we assist the public, whether it's accessing healthcare or other matters, particularly in rural communities. Many rural communities have been left behind for far too long when it comes to the provision of public transport. And I think as part of even the review I'm carrying out in terms of community transport, we'll have to look at how we deliver that transport in a different way to ensure that there's equal access to service for rural communities.
Shamil Holland.
Yeah, thank you. Question 5, please.
Sure. 6.
Yes, question 6. Sorry, it was question 5 yesterday. Apologies.
In order to address the safety issues on the Glenchest Road, I have allocated $275,000 to manage the damage associated with the slippage of the 27th of March 2024. This funding will facilitate surveys enabling works and allow for the completion of the detailed design throughout this financial year. Further funding will then be sought from next year's structural maintenance allocation once the detailed design is complete and a final estimate of construction costs can be developed. I can advise that funding was also provided to manage the impact of the most recent slippage further along the Glenchest Road associated with Storm Bert, and I am pleased to confirm remedial works are now complete at this location.
Shamil Holland for supplementary.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Minister. I know I've spoken about this a couple of times before, and it is just because of the impact that it is having on that farming community. Do you know if there be any further or additional measures being put in place to prevent further damage from any other storm-related activity along that road? We know that it is because of the increased waterfall or rainfall, but also the increase of water going onto the concourse of the road. Will there be any additional measures put in place before the final upgrade and
Minister.
the final works?
We will examine as to how we can secure the road moving forward. The member will have seen, and other members may have seen, the video footage taking of the most recent damage to the road, and it is on a significant scale. The topography of the area makes it very, very difficult, and with the intensity of some of the rainstorms we've had recently, the road simply has washed out from underneath, or the material has washed out from underneath the road, but we will examine to see how we can secure the road into the long term.
Call Sarah Brownlee.
Question 7.
My department has published flood maps for all across the region. These maps identify areas which may be vulnerable to flooding. A regional flood risk management plan for 21-27 has also been developed by my department. This FRMP, which is readily available on my department's website, includes a range of interventions to manage flood risk from a range of sources. As part of this work, my department is currently planning to commission detailed flood studies for both Newton Abbey and Carrickfergus to assess any river and coastal flood risks within these locations and identify if there are any economically viable schemes to reduce the impact of flooding in the area.
Randy.
Minister, and I appreciate that response. But in terms of the progression of the flood forecasting and the early warning alert, which could obviously allow more efficient, targeted emergency responses and flood warnings directly to residents, could he provide an update of where this is currently sitting with his department?
Sure. It is the ambition of my department to introduce such a measure. However, these include significant costs, but I do keep the matter under review through budgetary periods to see if I can set aside the funding to even initially start off and then reach the point where we do have an up-to-date flood identification programme.
And thank you to the Minister for your answer so far. Minister, can you outline in terms of flood risk management and what approach your department has taken specifically around Kings Row and Coal Island, which has flooded on numerous occasions, most recently during the heavy rain on the 23rd of November, causing devastation to those homes?
Minister.
In the lead up to the most recent storm, Storm Bert, there was a period of time of notification of that storm approaching. So my officials did manage to visit a number of sites that they had concerns about, particularly checking drainage and covers on drains if they were blocked by any materials. This was the case in the Kings Road area, where my officials visited, I believe, was on the Friday and again on the Saturday, as well, to ensure that there wasn't a reoccurrence of previous flooding, or as best as they could, because there was a number of factors involved in the flooding in Kings Road. I've also asked my officials to carry out a review of the flooding there and in Dundonald and a few other places which were impacted by the flooding in the previous storm, to see if there's any lessons we can learn from that. I would also, just at this point, like to put on record my appreciation to all the staff who were working over the weekend and who put in long hours, whether it's from all the agencies who responded to the most recent flood. A lot of the work they carried out pre to the storm hitting saved a lot of communities from damage and flooding, though this wasn't a particularly heavy rain event. It was more of a wind event. But the work that goes on behind the scenes is often unseen and unappreciated, but I can assure members there was significant work carried out by a multitude of agencies in the run-up to the most recent storm.
McMurray.
Speaker, and thank you, Minister. And just very briefly, I would like to associate myself with the comments about thanking the staff over the past weekend. Just to ask the Minister for his assessment of whether tidal defences in towns around Northern Ireland are adequate, or whether further improvements will be required in light of climate change to prevent further flooding incidents.
Sure. My department's role in terms of coastal defences is defences which protect my department's property. That may include roads and other areas. So that's my department's role in coastal flood defences. There has been some engagement with Minister Muir, and without going forward, there will continue engagement with Minister Muir and others. It has to be in terms of the executive as to how we ensure we have proper coastal defences in place as tides increase and storms increase moving forward.
Briggs.
And I associate myself with the Minister's thanks to the staff for their work so far. My colleague Joanne Bunting has been engaging with his department to try and get a meeting around future plans for to try and protect those houses in Dundonald. Could I ask the Minister to encourage officials to come back so that we can get a meeting to discuss what we can do to support them?
Minister.
I'm happy to raise that issue with my officials.
Colin McGrath.
Number 9, please.
Sure.
With your permission, Mr. Speaker, I will answer questions 9 and 10 together and ask for some extra time if that's appropriate. In terms of review of funding for NI Water, I have noted the Controller and Auditor General's report on the funding of water infrastructure that was published earlier this year. My department has previously carried out considerable work on the funding and governance options for NI Water. In 2019-20, the department formed a working group with experts from NI Water, the Utility Regulator, Department of Finance, SIB and Department for Infrastructure Finance to undertake research analysis of the situation. The work reviewed opportunities for raising additional revenue, operating more efficiently using financial transaction capital, additional borrowing and seeking an increase in public expenditure funding. My department also reviewed alternative water utility company structures across Britain and Ireland for the best practice. However, the privatisation and mutualisation models favoured in England and Wales require changes or charges to be paid by domestic water customers. Further recent evidence has demonstrated that these governance models do not necessarily provide the better levels of service people expect and can lead to higher levels of debt and increasing costs. In relation to question 10, the existing funding model and if it is sustainable and fit for purpose, there is a need for an additional funding for all public services, and ANA Water is not immune to this. Water and sewage infrastructure has suffered from years of historic underinvestment as a result of austerity policies by successive British governments, and we are dealing with the legacy of this. I continue to work with my executive colleagues in making the case for additional funding for NI Water. Indeed, I've been able to provide NI Water with an additional £32 million of public money in the October monitoring round, with £19.5 million of this specifically to address wastewater capacity issues to enable housing connections. If the suggestion is introducing another funding model, then the Assembly should be aware that other models proposed to date will involve domestic water charges and additional borrowing debt finance. This includes mutualisation, on which I have made my position clear in the private member's motion on the matter in April. To be clear, I will not be introducing domestic water charges, and I will not oversee additional borrowing, leading to an unmanageable scale of debt, similar to what has been experienced in some water companies in England. What I am doing is progressing a three-pronged approach in partnership with the Executive, seeking further investment from my Executive colleagues, reviewing the policy and legislation around developer contributions, and in securing Executive agreement for the Water, Flooding and Sustainable Drainage Bill to be introduced to the Assembly.
For supplementary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Whilst I hear in the answer there that the Minister agrees that there is something that needs to be done, can we get any sense of a timescale as to when it's going to happen? Because the problems are mounting up, people are suffering as a result of it, and all that we seem to hear is that we need extra funding, but we're not going to generate any extra money. How will we actually get something done?
Sure.
Let's see what we've done in recent months. I have provided NI Water with over £500 million of funding, 40% of the non-ring-fence budget of my department. In recent weeks, I have secured an extra £32 million for NI Water during the October monitoring round. I have introduced and got agreement from the Executive in relation to the Sustainable Drainage Bill, which will be brought forward to the Assembly in due course. And I'm currently working my way through what legislative changes or new legislation I will require to introduce developer charges in relation to NI Water. So there's three practical steps I have taken over this last period of time. I don't know if members had the opportunity last night to watch Panorama, a very interesting programme in relation to private water infrastructure and businesses in England. I would advise members to watch it, and those who advocate for the privatisation or the mutualisation of NI Water will be very worth their while watching it to see what the consequences of that are for the environment and also for shareholders. And, well, it's very good for the shareholders, it has to be said, but for bill payers.
Minister, time's up. That, members, ends the period for listed questions. We now move to 15 minutes of topical questions, and I call Mark Durkin.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. The Minister, like all of us, I'm sure, will have welcomed yesterday's publication of the long-awaited housing supply strategy, which outlines the Executive's ambition to deliver 100,000 homes over the next 15 years. How confident is the Minister that, given the current limitations of Northern Ireland Water, this target will be achievable?
Minister.
I'm confident that with the Executive working together and seeking solutions to the problems rather than simply highlighting the problems, that we can be successful in our ambition and our plan to deliver those number of homes over the next number of years. NI Water, like all public services, faces significant challenges. It's no different from any other public service out there. And I'm confident that the Executive colleagues understand the need that if we are to progress with our ambitious plans across a range of areas, that the Department of Infrastructure needs properly funded, and that if we don't have the drains underground, we can't put the cranes overground. And I'm bringing forward proposals in that regard.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker, and thank the Minister for his answer. Minister, in response to an earlier question, you'd outlined your opposition to water charges and your concerns around mutualisation, which I share. In that context, however, why is the Minister loath to or appears reluctant to proceed with the independent, expert-led review of Northern Ireland Water's funding and governance as recommended by the Northern Ireland Audit Office?
Minister.
The actual term used in the Audit Office report is encourages. There's no formal recommendation in the Audit Office report. It encourages me to. It encourages NI Water to. And if members come forward, or anyone comes forward to me with fresh information which would lead to an expert-led panel dealing with new information in terms of how you structure a water company, then I'm more than willing to do that. But to date, no one has come forward to me, or am I aware of, information that would lead to the benefit of an expert-led group being brought in. See, I could stand here and say, yes, I'm bringing in an expert-led group to carry out a review which will last 6 months and cost X amount of money, and be sort of pretty confident at the end of it they're going to come back to me with the conclusions that every other review of NI Water has conducted. So members need to get off the fence in this sense. You either support NI Water remaining a publicly owned company funded through direct taxation, or you fund it being privatised. That's the fence some people are currently sitting on, and people are perfectly entitled to get off that fence on either side to which they want to get off. But get off the fence and defend your position, because I am defending my position. I am not privatising NI Water, and I am not introducing domestic water charges.
Ms. Kimmins.
Can I ask the Minister for Infrastructure if his department will consider the implementation of a crash barrier at the Ferryhill Road in Killian, which is just outside Newry?
Sure.
My officials are more than happy to engage with the member in this regard and discuss the road safety implications in the area and how we best deal with those road safety implications.
Ms. Kimmins.
And I thank the Minister for his answer. And given that the road is treacherous, particularly in winter conditions, and numerous cars have had, there's been incidents over the years on this, would the Minister then consider that the road is added to the gritting schedule for the time being?
There is a long-standing policy in terms of the roads that the Department does grit, and can grip within the time frame they have and also the finances available to them. I'm more than happy to share that criteria with the member, and if she believes that the road in question meets the criteria, she should raise it with officials when she is in discussion with them around the crash barrier issue.
Minister, has there been any further developments on the prospect of introducing legislation to prohibit overtaking of a stationary school bus?
There's been no further developments in that regard in development of the policy, but it's something as we work our way through road safety improvements, and drivers should be aware, I believe under the Highway Code, that you shouldn't pass a stationary school bus, but if we do need to strengthen the legislation about it, then I think it's something we should look at.
Minister, this is vitally important, particularly for rural areas like my own constituency of Fermanagh and South Tyrone, especially as a young girl did lose her life as a result. So in the meantime, when there is no legislation, can you commit to working with other agencies and stakeholders to ensure maximum safety for our children and young people at bus stops on rural roads?
Yes, and I've said in the Chamber many times that 95% of all road traffic collisions are as a result of human error, whether it's the driver of the vehicle, a pedestrian, the cyclist, whoever it may be, the road user. It's human error that leads to 95% of all road traffic collisions. And I would appeal, particularly in these dark nights, anyone who comes across a school bus, whether it's on a rural road or on an urban road and it's stationary, to give space to the bus and also those passengers who are coming off the bus. I occasionally get the opportunity to lift my sons off the school bus, and I see why the young people come off that bus. You know, you have to have your wits about you there. So let's always, when we're approaching stationary school buses, be aware that there's young people about, and their lives are more busy and more exciting than ours, and they have a lot of things going on in their heads. So just give them the space, give them the time, and ensure they arrive home safely.
Alan Robinson.
Speaker, Minister, a number of your executive colleagues have been on the floor of the House in recent days and weeks detailing plans within their department's remit. When can we expect you on this floor with the detailed plans for the new and refreshed regional transport strategy?
Sure. I hope to be in a position to come before the House in the next calendar year, the early part of the next calendar year, in that regard. As you heard me mention earlier, there's a number of plans afoot or going through development in a number of areas across the north, but I do hope to be in a position to come forward with it in the early part of next year.
Robinson.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his answer. Does he recognise that those that I represent, and indeed those that his own party represent, are keen to see the roadmap for infrastructure projects, such as the dualling of the A26 to the north coast and the Ballykilly bypass?
Yes, it's going to be an important document and an important consultation and process that we're going to enter into. It will map out our road and transport network for the next 20-odd years, or maybe more. So it is vitally important, and I can understand the anticipation of members waiting on it, but I will do my best to bring it forward as soon as possible.
Keith Buchanan.
People are still experiencing delays receiving MOT dates and getting them in a timely manner. Can you please provide an update on what you're doing to try and address this delay?
I expect that by early spring of next year, the measures I have taken in relation to the exemptions will have had full impact, and we will see a significant reduction in time delays for people receiving their MOTs. There is some delays in areas. I have to say my mailbox in relation to this issue has significantly reduced over this last number of months, which may indicate an improvement in service. But I would encourage anyone who's seeking a date to continue to check the DVA website, and cancellations will become available. If you are at a point where your tax and other matters are coming into a collision with your MOT date, there is information on the NI Direct website, and DVA officials will work with you as best they can to get you a date and time.
So far for your answer. Minister, my understanding, Hydebank and Mollusk is going to put an additional 20% approximately capacity into the system, obviously to reduce delays even further. Can you provide an update on those two sites and when do you see those opening up to the public?
The member will be aware that we're now in legal proceedings with the company that was providing the equipment to both Mollusk and to Hydebank. I would hope that those legal proceedings are resolved as soon as possible, and then that will give us a greater indication of the capacity in the system moving forward. But he's quite right. It would be much better if Hydebank and Mollusk were up and running. It will take some of the pressure off other parts of the system. But thus far, I believe the measures that have been taken are being able to absorb the pressure.
Mr. Bradley.
Can I ask the Minister to give me an idea when his department expect to announce a decision to be made on application LA 012016-1382, the Merrow Hotel and Spa Complex in the North Coast?
This matter has been raised with me on several occasions, and quite understandably, but my officials are working their way through that application, and when they're in a position to make a recommendation to me, they will do so.
Bradley.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I thank the Minister for that answer, and I do acknowledge that he is working hard on it. But Minister, this is an approval issued by Causeway Coast and Glens Borough Council, and it's waiting on a call-in from your department. Hopefully this will be resolved soon so that the hotel can be complete for the 153rd British Open at Royal Portrush in 2025, given the understanding that just under 238,000 people attended the last event in Royal Portrush.
I can assure the member I'm acutely aware of the importance of the application and the upcoming major event that's being planned, but all planning applications have to be given fair and equal hearing, and this is exactly what's happening to this application.
Tom Buchanan.
Deputy Speaker, Minister, in light of the legal challenge to the A5, can you clarify whether all ongoing enabling works and works around vesting and so forth will now cease until after the court ruling, which I believe to be in March of next year?
Planned works will proceed. There is no legal injunction against us to prevent us moving ahead with planned works, and given the cost of delay to that project, I think it's only right and prudent that we move ahead as planned.
So there will be no implications then following the court case should the department continue on with the works of the A5?
I am not in, there is no legal impediment to the department continuing the works on the A5, and that's the process which we will now be commencing. Delays to the A5 going beyond the spring of next year run into tens of millions of pounds, not to mention the road safety implications of continuing delay. So my department will proceed within its legal framework.
Question 8 was withdrawn after the deadline. I call down Dodds.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Minister, I was going to talk to you about a young constituent and her long, chaotic car journey from Banbridge to Belfast, and her even longer, chaotic bus journey from Banbridge to Belfast. But this morning you announced the beginning of the procurement process for the A1. This is very good news for the A1 and all of the hundreds of thousands of cars that use it during the year. Can you tell us how long the process will be and when you expect to be in a position to appoint a contractor?
Sure.
If the member wishes to write to me about the experience of our constituents, I'd be more than happy to receive that correspondence and take a look at it. I think that would be important. And as you say, the second stage invitation to tenders will take. So I've made an announcement this morning. The second stage for invitation to tender will take place in spring 2025, following the pre-qualification assessment, which will determine a restrictive list of contractors. Construction for the scheme is due to commence in March 2026 and will take 3 years to complete.
Alan Dodds for a quick supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. That is good news, Minister. Can you just explain the length of the scheme from Hillsborough to which part of the junction between Loughbrickland and Newry?
Minister, and if you note with 1 minute, thank you.
I don't have the exact junctions in front of me, but the A1 Junctions Phase 2 scheme aims to provide further safety improvements along the A1 dual carriageway between Hillsborough and Lochbricklin, but I'm more than happy to provide the member with the details she required.
Okay, members, time is up. Can I ask you to take your ease before we move to the next item of business?